After 42 years, Canada returns to the Gulf, rewriting its entire trade future.
Analysts say this move could shift Canada's loyalty and leverage far beyond Washington. Welcome to Canada Next.
Breaking tonight, Canada's economic strategy just shifted dramatically. Abu Dhabi didn't hesitate. They opened the vault. Prime Minister Mark Carney boards a government aircraft at Ottawa International Airport this evening, destination United Arab Emirates. While Donald Trump tweets another tariff threat, one leader is building the future, the other is burning bridges. And the country that chose vision over vengeance is about to reveal exactly why strategic partnerships beat economic warfare every single time. Tensions are reaching a breaking point across North America tonight. Trump imposed crushing tariffs on Canadian goods, up to 35% on most products, 50% on steel and aluminum. Markets expected Canada to capitulate within weeks. Washington assumed Ottawa would beg for mercy. Analysts predicted economic collapse would force Carney to accept Trump's demands. They were all utterly incorrect. Ottawa, November 18th, 2025. The Prime Minister's itinerary tells the story Washington refuses to hear. Abu Dhabi first, then Johannesburg, then back to continue building partnerships across 3 continents. No press conferences announcing surrender to American demands. No emergency negotiations begging Trump to reduce tariffs. Just a systematic execution of the diversification strategy Carney's government announced months ago. The message embedded in every meeting, every handshake, every signed agreement. Canadian economic strategy no longer requires American approval. Translation. Ottawa just told Washington that Canadian sovereignty is non-negotiable. And what happened next? The Prime Minister that invested months building relationships across the Middle East and Africa reveals exactly why Canadian influence is surging globally, while American leverage collapses. Many analysts believe Canada's smaller economy would keep it dependent on American markets for years to come. They assume the geographic proximity to the United States made alternatives impossible. Financial commentators insisted no country could replace American trade volume. They were spectacularly wrong. Because while Trump was threatening Canada with economic destruction, Carney was quietly building something far more powerful. A dense web of global partnerships that would transform Canada from a vulnerable neighbor to diversified trading powerhouse. Dear viewers, between February and November 2025, something extraordinary happened in Canadian trade relationships. Washington pushed too hard. Ottawa said no. And the United Arab Emirates, wealthy and strategic, became the partner every Canadian industry started calling first. Let me show you exactly what's happening tonight as Carney's aircraft crosses into Middle Eastern airspace. This isn't a symbolic visit. This is a strategic repositioning of unprecedented scale. November 19th through 21st, Abu Dhabi. Carney meets with President Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan at the Presidential Palace. This is the first visit by a Canadian Prime Minister to the UAE since Pierre Trudeau in 1983. 42 years of missed opportunities, about to be corrected in 72 hours. These figures point to a situation that could raise serious concerns in Washington. Current Canada-UAE trade sits at $3.4 billion annually, $2.6 billion in Canadian exports, $800 million in imports. Over 150 Canadian companies already operate in the Emirates. But here's what changes everything. Carney's government has set a goal that seemed impossible 6 months ago: double all non-American exports within 10 years. Translation, cut dependence on the United States in half while building partnerships everywhere else. And the Emirates? They're not just interested, they're committed. With $1.7 trillion in the sovereign wealth fund assets, Abu Dhabi has more investment capital than most countries' entire GDP. They're pouring billions into artificial intelligence infrastructure, renewable energy projects, agricultural technology, and to data centers. Everything Canada produces exceptionally well. Everything the UAE needs desperately to diversify beyond oil. The artificial intelligence partnership alone represents a fundamental shift in global tech alliances. In October, Canadian AI Minister Evan Solomon signed a memorandum of understanding in Abu Dhabi. The framework? UAE investment in Canadian data centers, technology transfer agreements, and joint development of AI applications for healthcare, finance, and agriculture. Toronto-based Cohere is already working with Saudi Telecommunications. Montreal hosted UAE delegations at the All-in AI conference. The Emirates see Canada as the stable, trustworthy, energy-rich partner that respects sovereignty while delivering innovation. Think about the strategic brilliance here, as while Trump wages economic war using tariffs as weapons, Carney is positioning Canada as the reliable alternative to American chaos. Every investor, every trading partner, every nation watching Washington's unpredictable aggression is asking the same question. Where can we find stability? Ottawa has the answer. And tonight, in those private meetings at the presidential palace, billions in investment commitments are being finalized while Trump tweets insults. Energy is where this partnership becomes truly transformative. Canada possesses vast reserves of oil, natural gas, uranium for nuclear power, and rapidly expanding renewable capacity. The UAE controls nearly 4% of global oil supply, but desperately needs to diversify both energy sources and export markets. American energy policy under Trump remains chaotic, unreliable, and increasingly isolated. Canada offers long-term contracts, technological expertise, and political stability. Agricultural technology represents another billion-dollar opportunity. Canadian companies excel at precision agriculture, crop science, and food security technology. The Emirates, surrounded by desert, need every innovation available to ensure food independence. During this week's meetings, announcements of new joint ventures are expected, particularly in agricultural AI, water management systems, and sustainable farming techniques adapted for extreme climates. Infrastructure investment. The UAE has been building at unprecedented scale for decades. They understand large projects, complex engineering, and long-term planning. Canadian construction firms, engineering companies, and project management expertise are exactly what Abu Dhabi values. Not promises, deliverables, not rhetoric, results. But Carney isn't stopping in Abu Dhabi. November the 22nd through 24th, Johannesburg, South Africa, the G20 Leaders Summit, the first time this gathering of the world's largest economies meets on African soil. And Canada's Prime Minister arrives not as a desperate supplicant seeking alternatives to American markets, but as a confident leader showcasing successful diversification already underway. The symbolism matters intensely. While Trump skips multilateral forums, dismisses international cooperation, and alienates traditional allies, Carney is everywhere, shaking hands, signing agreements, building relationships that will define Canadian prosperity for generations. The G20 represents 85% of global GDP, 75% of international trade, 2/3 of the world's population. Every conversation Carney has in Johannesburg represents millions of Canadian jobs, billions in potential trade, and strategic partnerships that don't depend on Washington's approval. South Africa specifically offers opportunities that American isolation makes more valuable daily. Canadian mining companies excel at extracting critical minerals, rare earths, and resources essential for technology manufacturing. South African geology contains some of the world's richest deposits. Partnership seems inevitable. Canadian financial institutions, led by experts like Carney, who previously chaired the Bank of England and Bank of Canada, can offer sustainable finance mechanisms that developing nations need desperately. The clean energy cooperation alone justifies the trip. South Africa needs renewable technology to reduce coal dependence. Canada has the expertise, the companies, and the political will to make it happen. These aren't theoretical discussions. These are billion-dollar infrastructure projects with 30-year timelines. Dear viewers, notice the pattern emerging across every conversation, every meeting, every partnership Carney is building this week. When foreign leaders reference Trump's tariff chaos, express concern about American reliability, and ask if Canada can offer alternatives, Ottawa's answer is always the same. Yes, and we'll respect your sovereignty while doing it. This is the fundamental difference between economic coercion and economic partnership. Trump threatens, Carney collaborates. Washington demands, Ottawa delivers. American foreign policy under Trump operates through intimidation and unpredictability. Canadian strategy under Carney builds trust through consistency and competence. The numbers already prove this approach works. In the 10 months since Trump's tariffs began crushing Canadian industries, something remarkable happened. Canadian exports to Europe increased 22%. African trade grew 18%. Central and South American partnerships expanded 11%. According to some economic modeling, these new markets may already be offsetting approximately 25 to 30% of the lost U.S. export volume. And the trajectory is accelerating. Canadian tourism to the United States collapsed 33%, as citizens boycott American destinations. That's $20 billion annually that previously flowed south, now staying in Canada or going elsewhere. American hospitality, airlines, and retail suffer while Canadian travelers discover Europe, Asia, and Latin America offer everything Florida does, without the political toxicity. Meanwhile, Trump's tariffs are devastating American consumers and businesses. According to Tax Foundation analysis, the current tariff regime could impose approximately $1,200 in additional annual costs on the average American household in 2025, rising to $1,600 in 2026. Supply chains built over decades are collapsing. American manufacturers dependent on Canadian inputs are closing facilities. The trade war Trump started to punish Canada is destroying American prosperity instead. Let me emphasize this historical moment one more time because it reveals everything about how dramatically Canada's strategic position has evolved. The last Canadian Prime Minister to visit the UAE was Pierre Trudeau in 1983. Ronald Reagan occupied the White House. The Cold War defined global politics. The internet didn't exist. 42 years of neglecting Middle Eastern relationships while focusing almost exclusively on the United States. That era ended tonight. When Carney's aircraft touched down in Abu Dhabi, it represented more than one diplomatic visit. It symbolized the complete transformation of Canadian foreign policy from American dependence to global diversification, from reliance to resilience, as Carney's government phrases it constantly. And the Emirates understand exactly what they're getting. A G7 nation with stable democracy, rule of law, technological sophistication, vast natural resources, and desperate eagerness to reduce American market dependence. Every characteristic that makes Canada valuable to the UAE makes other nations equally interested. India, Japan, South Korea, Germany, France, and dozens of emerging economies are watching this week's meetings closely. If Canada and the UAE can build transformative partnerships this quickly, what's possible elsewhere? Translation. While Trump wages economic warfare against America's closest ally and second largest trading partner, that ally is building the partnerships that will define 21st century prosperity. While Washington isolates itself through chaos and aggression, Ottawa is everywhere, signing agreements, attracting investment, demonstrating that reliability and respect beat intimidation every single time. The meetings happening this week in Abu Dhabi and Johannesburg aren't just about immediate trade deals or investment announcements, though those matter enormously. These conversations are establishing Canada as the stable, predictable, trustworthy alternative to American economic policy. Every investor choosing Canadian data centers over American facilities, every trading partner diversifying away from U.S. dependence, every nation seeking reliable partnerships is validating Carney's strategy. And here's what makes this moment even more significant. The UAE and South Africa represent two of the world's largest emerging markets, but they're not alone. After Carney returns from this trip, the pipeline includes potential visits to India, expanded partnerships across Southeast Asia, deeper European integration, and Latin American cooperation frameworks. This isn't one successful diplomatic mission. This is the blueprint for permanent strategic transformation. Trump assumed Canadian geography and trade dependence made economic coercion inevitable. He calculated that threatening 35% tariffs would force immediate capitulation. He believed Canada had no alternatives, no options, no ability to resist American economic might. He was catastrophically wrong. Because while Trump was tweeting threats, Carney was building partnerships. While Washington burned bridges, Ottawa was constructing new ones. While America chose isolation, Canada chose the world. The country that spent decades depending overwhelmingly on American markets is discovering something powerful. Look, the world isn't small anymore. Opportunities exist in dozens of time zones, hundreds of markets, thousands of partnerships waiting to happen, countries that show up offering genuine collaboration instead of demands. They find partners fast. Tonight, Mark Carney sits down with Sheikh Mohamed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Agreements get signed. Commitments get discussed. Canadian influence expands across the Middle East and Africa, while American leverage keeps contracting. One truth becomes impossible to ignore. Canada chose resilience. And resilience, dear viewers, is winning